Resident Evil. Hey, hey, Wolfpack, we're back with another surprise tier list stream. Once again, returning to the crazy world of Resident Evil. And I'm here ranking all the remakes. Yep, we're gonna be talking about all the remake games. I've had some requests from people to do a ranking on all of these, but I have not played every single Resident Evil title ever made, so I decided to settle on the ones I have played or have some familiarity with, and that's the remakes. REs 1 through 4. Unfortunately, that's as far as the remakes I've gotten so far, but I will be ranking them all on this here tier list right now. If this is your first tier list ever, I'll go over the rules. I'll be ranking each and every game, there's only 4 of them, from which are top best to bottom worst. I enjoy the Resident Evil franchise. I have played a number of the games. I have played the remakes on the Game Pass, except for 4 I had to watch, but I decided to do a ranking on all of them. Making sure everything's in order. Yeah, looks like it. Alright, let's do this. Let's rank all the Resident Evil games. These are my rankings, top best to bottom worst. I'll explain this if this is your first tier list ever. I'll be ranking each and every game up here from who's on top best to the bottom worst, and I have fun categories for each and every title. Up top, we have stars. These ones are the S tier. They're the great ones, the perfect ones, some of the funnest video games of all time, and great portrayals of the classic Resident Evil titles. Underneath we have Jill Sandwich. These ones are good, not great. Sorry, making sure everything's working. Yeah, these ones are pretty good, they're decent, they're golden. I would definitely play them over and over again. They might have some flaws or most likely sections of the game I hate replaying, but they're good. They're as tasty as a Jill Sandwich. Then underneath that we have Mission Complete. These ones are okay, they're fine, they're average. Making sure everything's working. Alright. Yeah, so just making sure I got everything in order here. Okay, Mission Complete, okay, average, did their job. Silver Skull, definitely a decent game, but not what I would call one of the all-star greatest hits. They were alright, they completed their mission. Underneath that, we have What? What is this? These ones are weak. They're the lame ducks. They're below average, more so Bronze Skull territory. They were kind of disappointing, had a few highlights, but not enough for me to say that this was a great game or highly recommend it. They're in this level. What is this? But at rock bottom, we have You're Pitiful. These ones are awful. The worst games of all time. The worst representation of Resident Evil, and pretty much not a fun game, and I think you all know exactly what's gonna go down here. But yeah, that's our ranking, top best to bottom worst, and I gave them all funny categories this time. Oh, I actually do have a bit to say here. Unfortunately, I have to go to a wedding, and the people who are getting married don't actually want to have lodge story. Don't ask, pray for me. Okay, good luck, John Smith. Don't worry, you can always watch it after I'm done. Alright, so we have all 4 games. There are only 4 remakes so far. There's debate over what game they're gonna remake next. The most likely would be 5, but based on what Capcom's been saying and a lot of word traveling around the grapevine, it sounds like they're trying to steer clear of 5, and I heard some people are wishing that they make a remake of RE0 and Code Veronica. I honestly hope those 2 get remade too, because they definitely need it and they're awesome games, but yeah, there's some problematic material in 5 and Code Veronica, which is why a lot of people are on the fence over which is going to get remade, and a certain post-credit scene in 4 kind of makes people question if 5 is going to play out the exact same way. But yeah, we're going to talk about all of them, all the good, the bad, and the lame. So let's finally start this tier list with Resident Evil 1. The first game is going on to S tier. Yeah, was there really any doubt? The first game is a classic, even with the terrible voice acting aside from the original, so it got remade with much better voice acting, but it kept kind of the goofy dialogue still. This remake is pretty good. Yeah, sorry, making sure everything works. Yeah, RE1 is a fantastic game, and it actually had one of the most successful remakes of all time. Believe it or not, this remake was remade way back then. It was like on the GameCube at first, and it has gained several remasters or redistribution ever since. It's been on the GameCube, it's been on the Wii, it's been on the Xbox 360, Xbox One, PS4, PS5, and Xbox One S, and is available both on physical and digital. Yeah, this one is a pretty big deal. It's considered one of the greatest updated games of all time, and it's not hard to see why. Hey, Mad Dog, you made it. Sorry John Smith couldn't stick around. Okay, so if you don't know the story, RE1 has probably the most simplest story out of all these games. Chris Redfield, Jill Valentine, and their STARS team go to the Arklay mansion. Rumor has it that some sinister things are happening at this mansion, and it's near the edge of Raccoon City. Some say that the zombies and monsters have been spotted. They send in a team to investigate. However, Bravo team completely disappeared, forcing them to send in another team, Alpha team, and that's you and your main characters. Alpha team is sent in to investigate what's going on here, but will soon discover the mansion is haunted. Not by actual ghosts, but mutant monsters and zombies. Apparently, there's a secret lab hidden underneath the mansion, and the monsters, the test subjects, all got loose and are causing a rampage. And it's up to Team Alpha of STARS to stop this before it's too late. Have a ranking for the Thanksgiving holiday? No, I'm gonna be with family. I was gonna rank the Hannibal Saga for a tier list, but I have a video on that already, and I'm probably gonna be too busy anyway. Okay, so I do like this remake game. It is pretty much a modern version of the old game, but with much better graphics, a lot better voice acting, some new scares, some new additions added to make the game even better, even scarier, and even deeper, and of course, tries to maintain the spirit of the original. You can choose who you want to play as. There is an A scenario and B scenario. The ending is affected by your choices and who you choose to play as. The playable characters are Chris Redfield, badass soldier extraordinaire, and Jill Valentine, hot, sexy final girl. Jill Valentine is actually a star soldier. She's like the newest one on the team, but Chris Redfield and Jill Valentine are all-star heroes for video games, and of course they were the best characters in the first game. Albert Wesker's here, played by the great DC Douglas, so you know he's a highlight. We get to see Barry Burton, a lot more serious this time. He's not as funny as OG Barry Burton, but I do like him as a character. Joseph Frost, of course, dies early. Spoilers, but that's literally in the opening cutscene. Joseph Frost dies, and Rebecca Chambers was a part of Bravo team, and you find her alive. Basically, they hide in this mansion. They realize that the dangers are very real. Zombie dogs end up chasing them. Joseph Frost dies in the intro. And you hold up in the Arklay mansion, where you try to basically survive. Yeah, Resident Evil at its core is a survival horror, and this one embraces it a lot more compared to the other remakes. But yeah, love the gameplay. It is pretty fun to play as. The gameplay is very cool, very interesting. I will warn you, they do go back to the old tank controls. That is a bit of a polarizing thing for Resident Evil. They use tank controls in a lot of old games, and Resident Evil definitely had them in almost all their early titles. This one brought the tank controls back in full force. What does that mean? Tank controls are a lot harder to move around. You're basically moving like a tank. You have to face forward to move forward. You have to face backwards in order to move backwards. The camera doesn't rotate with you. It just shows you the area you're in. Get a lot of clear shots that are a bit hard to navigate if you're not used to this type of control. But the monsters are definitely creepy here. Thanks to the graphics, it looks a lot better. I love the first game. It is fun, it's goofy, it's campy, and the voice acting is hilariously bad, but it's like so bad it's good. The remake actually takes everything that was strong about the first game and basically makes it a full-blown horror movie. At its core, Resident Evil is a hardcore horror franchise. It is scary, it is grotesque, it is very unnerving, and a lot of intense boss fights, super great twists, and this game actually plays it mostly seriously. There are some goofy one-liners, but overall I would say it is much darker than the first game. Albert Wesker is a lot more threatening, and the monsters are far more finely detailed. They look grotesque, look kind of realistic honestly, and the boss fights are super creepy. The boss fights are pretty cool. Lisa Trevor is actually introduced in this game. She was not in the original, she was added and they gave us like a bonus boss. And the bosses from the old game do reappear in this. You fight the giant snake, the yawn, which is still pretty scary. The graphics have aged very well. The giant snake is very intimidating. The giant spiders, if you're arachnophobic, you will be terrified by them. They look like Aragog and the spiders from Harry Potter in this. But I do think the original kind of packed a charm. The spiders look like realistic tarantulas. Then there's also, Lisa Trevor. She's in here. She gets a pretty cool boss fight. Lisa Trevor, a very tragic character. She was a kid who was experimented on and turned into like this grotesque monster. She has a hunchback. Her hands are like held in like a stock, like handcuffs, and she has tentacles like out of her backside. She's always crying for her mother and killing everything in sight in this pure primal rage. Very tragic character, and you, of course, beat her by knocking her down a well, and the Tyrant is in this. I will say the Tyrant is not as scary as he was in the original. He looks a lot better. He looks godlike as Wesker praises him as the ultimate life form, but he gets killed by like 10 shotgun shells. It does not take too much to kill the Tyrant. I think the giant snakes and spiders were a lot tougher to kill. But yeah, the Tyrant, he's in this. He kills Wesker. I kind of question how Wesker survived this. It is still a major question mark. I know Wesker's a badass, but he has a hole in his chest and is completely ripped apart. He came back in the original, but it didn't look as fatal. Here, he's like completely impaled by a giant claw, but Wesker, as we know, survived and came back for revenge in Code Veronica. He's in the post-credits of RE4, and RE5 gave us the best Wesker ever. Did I get all the bosses? Yeah, I think I did. I usually like to play as Jill Valentine, because Jill is, well, she's hot, she's kick-ass, she's a good final girl, I would say. I like Jill because she's kind of a throwback to the final girls, but Jill can actually fight and has that really awesome outfit. Chris Redfield, I do like him. I like Roger Craig Smith as Chris Redfield, and hearing him again is pretty pleasant. I think this was the first time Roger Craig Smith voiced Chris Redfield. He would go on to play him again in RE5s and 6 and some of the movies. But Chris Redfield, I think, is alright. Chris has a lot more power but less space in the inventory, which is kind of an inconvenience. Jill gets slightly more health and a lot more inventory, but she can get more weapons as she's not as physically strong as Chris Redfield is. Of course, I love DC Douglas's Albert Wesker. Wesker is not the badass we all know and fear, the guy in the cool Matrix outfit. Wesker is a normal guy. He's the captain of the STARS team. He wears his police uniform in this one. He still wears his sunglasses at night because that's his trademark. Wesker is a lot more sinister, a lot more shady. He actually has a little respect for Chris and Jill when working with them. Barry Burton is set up to be a decoy villain and much better in the remake because the remake was allowed a lot more advantages thanks to technology getting better. Yeah, Barry is set up like the fake out villain, but nope, it was Wesker all along. He was stealing stuff and intel working for Umbrella Corps until he ends up betrayed and killed. Spoilers, he survived and he killed Lisa Trevor on the way out. It's honestly pretty fun. The graphics look pretty dang good. I would say the graphics hold up masterfully well. It looks like it would be released today. That's how good the graphics are. And it plays exactly like the original game, which is why it's so fun. And yes, there are a lot of interesting twist endings that you can get through based on your playthrough. You can either win it as Jill, you win it as Chris, you can lose certain characters. Barry Burton can die, Albert Wesker usually dies, but we know he's still alive, and Rebecca Chambers can also almost die, but Rebecca's canonly alive in later stuff. Yeah, Rebecca Chambers is in this, and I do like her redesign a lot more. Rebecca looks less like a kid and an actual adult woman. Yeah, Wesker still looks pretty cool. DC Douglas and Roger Craig Smith would go on to play the characters in future stuff, future RE sequels, RE movies, and yes, even Marvel vs. Capcom 3, which I really love. I love that game. But yeah, speaking of which, RE, the original, is definitely a good game. It is fun. It is creepy. It is a complete remake, actually, a faithful remake, a very good remake, bringing the greatness of the first game to a new audience, and that's why it's going up onto stars. Alright, next we'll do Resident Evil 2, and yeah, big shock, also going on to stars. Okay, so I'm kind of on the fence if I like it more than the first one, but that's because the first one was so good and tried to replicate everything great about the original, even the game mechanics. RE2, it is a damn good remake. I won't lie, it is awesome, it is fun, it ramped up everything great about the original RE2, just like the first one did, and added quite a lot. Mr. X is greatly expanded upon, and Mr. X became a huge gaming villain after this title. That was how successful it was. William Birkin is here, and he has a much more grosser design, a lot better multi-phase boss fights, but Mr. X is pretty much the best villain of the game, and he's the one everyone remembers. Yeah, so RE2, if you don't know the story, follows rookie cops Leon Kennedy and Claire Redfield. Leon and Claire work for the Raccoon City Police Precinct, and unfortunately, Raccoon City is invaded by zombies. It is a total zombie apocalypse game, and a very creepy one. It's not as over the top as other zombie apocalypse stories, but Raccoon City is completely taken over, destroyed, and invaded by the undead. Monsters are around every corner, and there is a lot less people around. There are some, but the city is pretty much vacant and empty. Everyone is dying or in hiding from the zombies. Zombies are slowly taking over, and Leon and Claire, for the first half of the game, slowly put together that something bad is going on here before trying to find a way to survive. RE2 Remake was an exceptional remake. Yeah, I do like it. I'm kind of on the fence if I like it more than the first one, but the first one was pretty good and left an amazingly high bar. Yet there's a reason why they didn't try remaking the other games for the longest time, because the first one left pretty big shoes to fill. Yeah, Leon Kennedy and Claire Redfield, also badass characters. Claire Redfield is Chris's sister. Leon Kennedy became kind of the main hero for this entire franchise. I mean, when everybody thinks about who's the true protagonist of Resident Evil, Leon Kennedy is often the biggest name that comes up. I do like Chris and Jill a lot more than Leon, but Leon is undeniably badass. I like his story. Leon basically goes from this newbie rookie cop who completely fresh-faced, does not know the ropes of the precinct, and is pretty much on his first day working as a cop, suddenly becomes a hardened badass surviving this horrible zombie nightmare. This was my introduction to Mr. X, and good golly did I fear running into him. Good job on him. Yeah, so after RE7 ended up being such a huge success, they decided to apply the Stalker enemy to every future RE title. The Stalker enemy has been around in other games, but RE2 kind of solidified it as a mainstay for the franchise going forward. The Stalker enemy is basically this OP giant bullet sponge that is too tough to kill. You have to survive them. You can only stall them, wound them, slow them down, but they will keep coming for you. Mr. X definitely left a huge high bar for these remakes, and it's not hard to see why. Mr. X is terrifying. Mr. X is an absolute badass tyrant, one of the greatest Umbrella assassins ever. Mr. X is dispatched basically to silence a bunch of loose ends, and unfortunately Leon and Claire end up bumping into him. Mr. X is this giant tyrant wearing like a Mr. Enter outfit. He wears like a big trench coat and a fedora hat, and has the face of this grotesque zombie. He is unsettling, to say the least. Some would argue Ethan Winters as the possible main protagonist. Well, Blue Thunder, he's also dead. Yeah, Leon Kennedy, he's been in more games than Ethan and is still alive. Yeah, Leon was in RE2, RE4, RE6, RE... No, he wasn't in that one. He was in a lot of the movies. He was in, like, pretty much all the movies, even one of the crappy Paul W.S. Anderson ones. Claire Redfield, I also like. Claire is kind of more dorky in this game. She's much more lighthearted, much funner, which Claire has usually been depicted as. I like Claire a lot more in Code Veronica, but here, I think she's fine. She has like a lot more comic relief moments, a lot of relating with Sherry Birkin. Sherry's the little girl you end up saving. You save her, get to see more of her. It is kind of weird seeing Sherry Birkin as a kid again after RE6 made her a grown adult woman. Hey, Kat, I've made it. Sorry for missing out on the Monster Musume tier list. That's okay, Chris. Those footsteps of Mr. X are the most terrifying sounds in the game. Yeah, they are. And Ada Wong is in this, and I'm kind of sad to say this. Ada is not as hot in this game as she was in the old titles. I think she's pretty, but that's really it. Ada Wong is also kind of a newbie instead of the professional badass she was in the original RE2. Ada Wong is one of my favorite characters of all time, and it felt like they kind of wimpified her, they nerfed her. They didn't want to make Ada Wong too OP, but that's what kind of made her very interesting. Ada Wong pretends to be a regular civilian trying to find help. Leon Kennedy inadvertently helps her, but it turns out Ada Wong is a professional thief. She's Resident Evil Catwoman. She's a pro thief, a pro burglar. She's trying to steal intel for Umbrella Corps and was using Leon Kennedy along the way. She does help him. Ada kind of becomes a defrosting ice queen. She doesn't like Leon at first, but slowly comes around to loving the rookie cop, and they do share their first kiss just like they did in the original. Though, I was not too keen on her redesign. They give her also a trench coat, and for some reason, like a scarf and sunglasses. It looks really weird at night. The mother-daughter relationship between Claire and Sherry was one of my favorite things about the remake. Yeah, I agree, that was pretty cute, though. I also love setting Sherry on fire because it doesn't kill her. Yeah, I know, I have a sick sense of humor. Claire Redfield, I thought was fine. Leon Kennedy is a lot more interesting because he has a more deeper arc, especially because Leon is not as skilled as Claire is. Claire is kind of a female Chris Redfield. She's badass, she's tough. It is satisfying to kill Chief Irons as her. Claire mostly deals with William Birkin. Birkin is this grotesque mutant monster trying to stick an embryo in his daughter. Yes, I know what I just said. And Leon is much more of a noob. He's a rookie cop growing stronger all throughout the game, and he deals with Mr. X a lot more than Claire does. Yeah, I know they kind of cross paths with enemies, but Leon and Mr. X are pretty much the main enemies, while Claire and Birkin are arch enemies. Alright, catch up on comments. Yeah, Sherry Birkin is also pretty adorable, but she was adorable in the first game. Chief Irons gets his story a lot more expanded upon. He was this pretty creepy villain in the original, but here, he's pretty much one of the biggest side villains of the game. Chief Irons is the corrupt police chief, and it turns out he, like, moonlights as a deranged serial killer, and likes to kill attractive women and turn them into trophies. Chief Irons, honestly, I kind of think was nerfed in this game. I thought he was much creepier in the original. In the original, he kind of hid his villainy. Yeah, it wasn't super well, but it was still felt like he was always in control, always tried to act sane. Here, Chief Irons is pretty much on edge all throughout the game and kind of comes across as an obvious nut job, which, surprise, he turns out to be. He's working for Umbrella and tries to take Sherry Birkin hostage. It is kind of creepy. They add a level where the old chief is chasing Sherry around a dark room, adding kind of a sense of tension and vulnerability. I don't like that much the remake because both sides A and B are almost the same, no replayability. Really, Batman. The Batman Smith. Chief Irons is my least favorite thing about the remake. They just made him a one-dimensional hate sync character. Yeah, that's my problem too, Blue Thunder. I thought he was much creepier in the original, mostly because they add a lot of layers to his insanity. In the remake, he is like an obvious villain, and that's what I found kind of weak about him. The first game didn't really have that weakness. This one does, which is why I kind of prefer the first one a bit more. But also, there are a ton of fun boss fights. You fight, of course, Mr. X, who is one of the scariest villains of video game history now. William Birkin gets a multi-stage boss fight too, and he gets grosser and grosser as he suffers more damage. The giant crocodile only shows up in Leon's scenario. Oddly, I never encountered the crocodile as Claire. I think it's like exclusive to Leon's scenario. Like the croc has a more intense boss fight. Again, the graphics are much more polished and more modern here, which is why it's kind of better. I do think the original RE2 still has its scary moments and highlights, but they really give the monsters a lot more great detail, and you can actually replay the original's soundtrack in this game, which is super fun because it gives that nostalgia feel. They eliminate areas. The OG was more darker. I agree. Who do you think would win, Mr. X or Nemesis? If it's the real Nemesis, I side with Nemesis. If it's remake Nemesis, Mr. X, easy. They eliminate areas. RE3 eliminated a lot more areas. RE2 actually tried replacing some of the areas. I don't like that much, the remake. Okay, read that one. Well, did you feel that same way about RE1, where Jill and Chris's side A or side B playthrough were too similar? The OG was more darker, I agree. It would have been better if they made Chief Irons a guy who's being forced to do these bad things because of the situation, and make him more of a sympathetic character. It would have, but unfortunately they took the opposite idea. Let's make him more of a monster than he was in the original, and I like the original Chief Irons a lot more because of how subtly creepy he was, and how we got to see that he was a lot more insane than his fake politeness led on. Okay, so we find out Sherry Birkin is being tracked by her parents. The father, William Birkin, turned evil. I will say Sherry's mom is a much deeper character in this remake. Annette Birkin actually wants to save her daughter and try to fix the zombie virus that's happening. Compared to the original, where Annette Birkin was pretty much a double villain siding with her insane husband, here they give her a lot more layers as a character. She's trying to fix her mistakes and genuinely wants to save Sherry instead of sacrificing her like the original did. Unfortunately, Annette also lost points because she kills Ada. Yeah, Ada Wong gets shot and dies, but if you know the story, no, this was not the end of her, because nobody really dies in video games. Yeah, Annette Birkin actually has a sympathetic story. Unfortunately, she still dies. Annette Birkin dies. William Birkin finally gets killed by either Claire or Leon. And Mr. X takes a rocket launcher that finally kills him. Yeah, exactly like the original. Ada Wong drops a rocket for Leon. Possibly Claire, which is kind of funny because I don't think Ada and Claire ever encounter each other in either playthrough. Yeah, you rocket Mr. X in his final form, you escape, and kind of like the original, Sherry Birkin has no trauma or angst over the fact that her parents are dead. Maybe you two can adopt me. And they're all laughing, walking into the sunset. Sherry completely gets over her mom and dad are dead. Yeah, don't worry, she'll be a better character in RE6. Okay, so I do like RE2. The gameplay mechanics are pretty good. The enemy types are a lot more varied here. There's the lickers, we see the hunters come back. The zombies are much harder to kill. You can even headshot them and they still don't go down. Mr. X is pretty much the big selling point of this game. After Mr. X became one of the best stalker type enemies, they would try to do this in literally every game. Like Lady D became a stalker enemy, Jack from RE7 became a stalker enemy, RE9 is also gonna have another stalker enemy, and of course the Nemesis is another stalker enemy, and I think RE4 also had a temporary stalker enemy, like Krauser was kind of one, but there's also the one that goes after Ada in separate ways. Well, at least Sherry got a good mom in Claire. Yeah, she does, but the fact that she has, like, no tears for her mom dying. Leon A, Leon B, Claire A, Claire B were completely different stories and different cutscenes and decisions. Yeah, they can switch opposite sides of the police gate, and kind of weird that Claire and Leon also flirt with each other. I knew they were friends, but I didn't know they were that close. Yeah, Leon is still the badass ladies man he ever was in the original. Leon attracts Claire and Ada and a civilian woman, and as we all know, RE4 Ashley will be all over him. Not sure if they'll remake RE5 and 6 though. But yeah, Leon still attracts everyone, and Claire might be into him, but if you know Claire, she has a very bad history with romance interests. Looking forward to a remake of RE5 and seeing how they treat it. That's what I was kind of talking about, Chris. I don't think they're going to remake RE5 based on what happens at the end of RE4. I'll talk about that soon enough, but also the fact that there's still people crying online that RE5 is racist because you kill African zombies. The game takes place in Africa, people. Get over it. How scary is RE9 gonna be? Because I want to prepare myself. Based on the playable trailer, it looks like they're kind of going for another RE8 kind of style. There's like more haunted mansions, a lot of enemies hiding behind doors, and yes, there is gonna be another stalker type enemy in RE9, based on what I've heard so far. I am talking about the OG. Never forget the RE2 OG. Yeah, the OG is pretty great, but the remake, honestly pretty good. I do like the modern graphics. I do like that they dive more into some aspects of the story. A lot of the great parts from the original are here. Some stuff was deleted, but they also kind of make up for that with a lot more character interaction, a lot more details in the story, and Mr. X and William Birkin being much tougher enemies than they were in the original, definitely a highlight here. Still, I kind of prefer the first one more, but RE2 is a star. Okay, time to talk about that one. Let's do it. Let's talk about RE3 Nemesis, which ironically removed Nemesis from the title, which makes sense because he's barely in it. Oh, RE3. Boy, do we have a lot to say about this one. It's sad that when they refer to Resident Evil 2, they always put the remake or play the remake, the disrespect. Well, RE2, the original, needs to have some re-releases. I would play it again, but it's not on modern systems I have. Okay, let's finally talk about the Nemesis remake. And it's going on... You're pitiful. Oh boy. There are some parts I like in this game. I might bump it up a level once I start talking about it more, but the Nemesis remake is the weakest remake of the entire collection. It is completely divisive, and it's not hard to see why. RE3 is a remake of the Nemesis video game, and unfortunately, it doubles down on a lot of the worst aspects people had with RE2. They take away a lot of the plot, a lot of levels, and even a few boss fights and villains are completely subtracted from this equation. We follow Jill Valentine overcoming some PTSD. Jill Valentine has moved back into Raccoon City, however, the zombie apocalypse is happening at the same time. RE3 takes place in the same time as RE2. Raccoon City is invaded by zombies, and the Nemesis is dispatched to kill off all their loose ends, namely the Stars. Nemesis is sent to assassinate every member of the Stars team to kill them so they don't squeal, and Jill Valentine is of course on that hit list. Jill must survive Nemesis and the attack on Raccoon City, getting out alive and overcoming her trauma along the way. Now, that sounds like a pretty good idea for a story and a great update of a classic. So what's the problem? Well, they don't really do too much new with this game and kind of rush it. A lot of stuff is taken away. The story is missing a lot of parts that made the original Nemesis great, and they do not have the choice-based gaming which made the Nemesis title so cool. You could actually fight the Nemesis, try to kill him, or just run away, and it would affect the outcome of your ending. Here, they took that away and gave you a very linear reimagining. RE3 is donkey poo. I think RE3 is overhated. Yeah, to be fair, Blue Thunder, it's not the worst game ever, but it is a step down from RE2 and even RE1. I do not like how Jill Valentine is portrayed in this game. They tried to take away Jill Valentine's sex appeal, which is ironic because it's what made her character interesting in the first place, but they toned Jill down and kind of ruined her classic outfit. You see, Jill was dressed in that outfit because she was on break. She was on vacation. She was trying to chill out, and it's kind of an outfit she just had on at the time. But here, they turn it into her military outfit, and yeah, it does not make sense. Apparently, she just goes out to work in her tank top and has these jeans that cover her, and it looks kind of generic. Jill Valentine is given the Laura Croft treatment, where they made her look like a plain Jane every girl you see on the streets. And honestly, her personality is much worse than her looks being downgraded. Jill is a bitch. I do not like her. She's very cynical, very grouchy, and I know she's suffering from trauma, but for some reason she lashes out at everyone, and I do not like how Jill cusses every few seconds. Like, Jill does not have a huge potty mouth. She doesn't have a sailor mouth. Every word that comes out of her is usually the F-bomb or the S-strike, or she says bitch a lot. Huh, looks like you can't swim, bitch. Are you fucking kidding me? Next time, take the fucking hint. It reminded me way too much of Rob Zombie's movies. Jill's design is nice in this, and bringing it back in Death Island, that was kind of confusing, because in Death Island, Jill is coming back after RE5, and she looked greatly different in RE5. RE3 is like a roller coaster, but boring and linear. Next time, take the fucking hint. I like the other one-liner better. You want stars? I'll give you stars. Yeah, I know it's cheesy, but it's also pretty badass, and also didn't show that Jill is kind of a woman child. Jill acts like an angry teenage girl in this game, and it is very off-putting. I know, she's traumatized and suffering issues and emotional baggage, but it's kind of weird. Playing RE1 again, and Jill seems fine at the end of the game. In here, suddenly she's having nightmares that she's gonna become a zombie, is afraid of her mortality, and can't overcome the past that happened to her, but it really doesn't make too much sense, and Jill's become kind of a cynical loser. She has anger issues, and that's not Jill. They want to make Jill a strong, independent woman, but took away her kindness, and I just hate that character type. Like what, a strong independent woman can't be strong and independent and kind? They have to make her like an obnoxious bitch, always yelling at people and cussing every 5 seconds? Yeah, that's who a lot of women want to grow up to be. Jill is very grouchy in this, and I don't like her personality. They made her kind of cynical and made her like dark and edgy to be taken seriously, when a part of Jill's appeal was she was a badass foxy action girl. Hi everyone, AV Scorpio. At least she's more tolerable than Ellie from The Last of Us, the series I mean. I think in Last of Us Part 2 as well. I'm visiting my family. Okay, V Scorpio. Yeah, this was gonna be a short tier list. So, the gameplay is not too bad, I will say. I hate that the Nemesis is nerfed in this. That is the worst part of this. If you don't hate Jill, then you likely hate the Nemesis. Nemesis is greatly downgraded. He's still a stalker brute coming after you, but all it takes is a hand grenade to stun him. That didn't even work on Mr. X in the last one, and Nemesis is supposed to be the most advanced tyrant ever. Nemesis shows up in a lot of scripted parts, and Jill has so much plot armor. I will say I do like Carlos in this. Carlos is Jill's partner, and he's a lot more playable in this game, though his hairdo is really weird. Yeah, Carlos and Nikolai are a lot better in here than they were in the original. Nikolai was a fun, love-to-hate villain. Here, he's kind of more of a sadist, a lot more sinister, smug, and arrogant, but he does kind of have a love-to-hate charm to him, but in that darker way. Carlos actually undergoes a nice character arc here. He works for Umbrella, then realizes Umbrella was truly evil, that they were the cause of all this. It's all Umbrella's fault that the zombie uprising began in the first place. He's kind of living in doubt. He doesn't trust Jill's word until he does. He finds out Jill is telling the truth, and he becomes a good guy, aiding Jill in the final fight. Nemesis, shows up in scripted areas. Yeah, sometimes he chases you when you're exploring the map, but he's not as threatening. Nemesis used to be creepy in the original. He was like one of the greatest video game monsters of all time. Here, he's kind of a joke. He's very easily defeated. I guess it's supposed to be a testament to how badass Jill is that she can take him, but it feels like they made him too easy to beat. Admittedly, Nemesis is a little less scary than Mr. X. Yeah, especially because his outfit looks like he's wearing a trash bag. That was kind of weird. Like, Nemesis and Mr. X kind of wore the same trench coat. He looked more like a super Nazi zombie, but now they gave him like a trash bag and it looks really off. RE3 was only great when we play as Carlos, only positive. Yeah, Carlos is the best part. Which you prefer, Carlos in the game or Paul W. Sanderson's film? The game. The game, Carlos, much better. He doesn't anticlimatically die at the end. I do like Nikolai in this. Nikolai is a pretty good villain. You really love to hate him here. They give him a far more evil streak here, whereas in the original he put on like this fake facade of charm and politeness, even though he was evil as hell. Though Nikolai actually died in the original game. Here, they kind of keep it vague. You can kill Nikolai. I know the city gets nuked and it's implied he dies with it, but they leave the door kind of open in case they wanted to bring him back, and it's kind of confusing. Also, they took away all the different endings, where in the original RE2 and even the remake, you do have alternate endings. Here, no, it's mostly the same ending. There's like pretty much two endings. One has slightly different details, but they amount to the same. Carlos and Jill get away in a helicopter, Nikolai's left for dead, and Raccoon City is actually nuked. Here, Jill actually sees the bomb drop and kills all the zombies, but they took out the best ending, where Jill reunites with Barry. Yeah, Barry Burton's in the original RE3 ending, and for some dumb reason, they remove him here. Yeah, speaking of which, RE3 takes away a lot of good elements from the original game. They took away a lot of levels, the graveyard and the clock tower. The clock tower was so fun in the original, and I think there's like a boss missing, the giant sandworm that attacks. It's not even in here. One of the hunter minions is also not in here. They replaced him with elite liquors or something. They kind of condense a lot of the storytelling too. They do give Carlos's team a lot more badass send-offs and one-liners here, but a lot of them are just F-bombs and swears, which isn't really as impressive. RE3 was only great when you play as Carlos, only positive. Yeah, it was. Carlos is the best part. You get to play as Carlos. I do like the original Carlos a lot more because he's more suave and cool. This Carlos is a little bit snarky, but still kind of gruff and tough. He lightens up, he does have a few funny jokes, but I love original Carlos a lot more because he's so overconfident. I wouldn't want you to live in a Carlos-less world, senorita. Carlos clearly had a thing for Jill. Here, it's a lot more platonic, which I don't like. I guess they were afraid they'd make Jill a weak woman if she fell for a man's charms. Yeah, Jill I did not like in this game, and the boss fight with Nemesis, he does have multi-phases. As you damage the Nemesis more and more, he starts growing more monstrous, more powerful. The original had the Nemesis grow a faster mutation if you choose all the fight him options. Here, it's more scripted. There are no scenario A or scenario Bs in this game. It is much more linear. There's a much smaller scale map compared to RE2. You can enter the precinct, but you don't explore all the places Leon and Claire are at because that would ruin the continuity. But the gameplay, it's honestly fine. It feels like basic Resident Evil gameplay. They try to redo the fights from RE2, but it doesn't really change all that much, and fighting the Nemesis in his multi-boss forms is not as challenging. Nemesis turns into like a giant wild mutt dog. Then in his final phase, he turns into like this weird blob monster. It's not as impressive or intimidating as the original. Here he turns into like a monster stuck in the wall, and you have to activate all these reactors to charge this big ass railgun. And yeah, I'm also kind of conflicted here. Everybody made fun of RE5 for Chris Redfield punching boulders. Here, Jill picks up a giant railgun that's twice her size and twice her weight and one-shots the nemesis in his mouth. She drags this big-ass gun the size of a friggin' car, lifting it up somehow in her petite, weak body, and puts it in the nemesis's mouth to say her stupid one-liner. Next time, take the fucking hint. Like, guys, this was worse than the boulder punching of RE5. How do people not see that? Which form of the nemesis you like in this game? I will say I do like the wild mutt form. I like he's like that dog. He's running really fast around you. That one I found much more impressive. Not a big fan of the giant blob form. It felt a lot more generic, and they kind of ruined his default appearance because he looks like he's wearing a trash bag. But yeah, Jill basically gets over her fears, defeats the nemesis, and you can potentially shoot Nikolai. Nikolai holds Carlos hostage, and it has this scenario kind of like from Call of Duty Black Ops 2, where you have to like shoot him or save the hostage. But yeah, Nikolai gets shot, he's wounded, and he possibly lives if you don't fatally wound him, or most likely dies because he's shot in a fatal area, or the nuke goes off and vaporizes him. They weirdly try to leave his fate ambiguous, hinting that they were gonna have like a DLC with him, or have Nikolai pop up in a future title, but so far he hasn't, so I believe Nikolai is canonally dead, but not as permanent as the original. Yeah, I like for this game, I like Nemesis in his weird dog form. I do like Nemesis's final form in the original the most out of all his transformations. Nemesis is a cool villain, but this game did not do him justice. Nemesis is kind of barely there. He shows up a few times to ambush you, kill you, but all you need is like a hand grenade to stun him, then you run away easily, and he doesn't follow you into areas like the Mr. X does. Mr. X was relentless, and that's what made him scary. He even followed you into areas or was out there waiting for you to get out. Nemesis kind of gives up, shows up whenever the plot demands it, or wherever the AI model is bumming around. Where the DS game? It wasn't on this tier list, sorry, only have the official ones. Technically RE1 is on here too, so we put that in stars, but yeah, RE3 is going on to You're Pitiful. It's also really short, and to make matters worse, it was attached with a multiplayer game, which also ended up sucking. It was not as good as the RE5 mercenary mode. It's a letdown. RE3 might not be the worst game ever, but compared to the remakes, it is pitiful. But let's end things on a high note with RE4. Yep, they remade the greatest game in the franchise and actually did a pretty good job. It's going on to stars. Alright, we made it. Everyone's favorite title, RE4. Not gonna lie, I was kind of worried when they were announced that a remake of this game was in development, because the original RE4 is a masterpiece. It is a great game, it's fun, it's cool, it's action-packed, it's bone-chilling at times, and has Leon Kennedy at his best, interacting with some of the best characters of the franchise. Sadler, Krauser, Ada Wong, Salazar is always hilarious, and Ashley is there. Yeah, Ashley was the worst part of the original, and unsurprisingly, the worst part of the remake. But much to my surprise, they did a good job. RE4's remake ended up being really good. I do wish they kept Ada's original look, but they gave her the weird Velma sweater. Resident Evil 4 is a good game, just like the original. If you don't know the plot, Leon Kennedy must save the president's daughter when she's taken hostage by Sadler and his zombie cult. Sadler runs a cult island where he's building up bioweapons in order to take over the world. Of course, Sadler is gaining power to achieve godhood and runs a cult of zombies. The zombies are actually in a horror movie cult. Sadler is the main villain of the game, and he's recruited some powerful enforcers to help him. He's taken the president's daughter hostage to use as a gambling chip in his evil plan. However, Secret Service agent Leon Kennedy, now promoted after being a hero of RE2, finally returns to the saga, where he must infiltrate this island and save the president's kid, and taking down some mutant monsters along the way. RE Remake, remove iconic cutscenes, iconic cheesy dialogue, remove little areas, remove quick time events, remove the knife fight quick event Krauser. I hate the IA of Ashley. AI, yeah, I don't like her too. Love Ada's design in this, and the attire she's wearing, even the mods too that you can have her wear. Yeah, so I kind of prefer Ada's look in the original. Ada wore that sexy red dress. Here they give her a red sweater, which ironically shows off more of her body than the dress did, but hey, I won't complain about that Ada fan service. Unfortunately, I don't like Ada Wong's voice acting. Ada's voice acting in the remake is terrible. The original did it so much better. Liked her look more, liked her voice acting more, and I liked her flirtatious banter with Leon a lot more. RE4 kind of takes away the comedy and campiness of the original and tries to play it as a dead serious Lovecraftian horror movie, and I do think they succeed in a lot of areas. It is pretty fun, it's still entertaining, and fighting the reimagined versions of classic bosses packs a lot of fun. The old game has something that the new one doesn't have, personality. Yeah, I agree. So, I do kind of like the campiness of Resident Evil. RE4 was definitely the best at it. Sadler was a much more hammy, over-the-top, mustache-twirling villain. Here, they took away his personality, made him like a dead serious horror movie villain. It kind of made him more forgettable. I will say his boss fight is much better though. I always found the original Sadler boss fight way too easy. Like, it is not challenging, especially next to Krauser and Roman Salazar, but Sadler in this game is easily the toughest boss. I like his spider form here. You still kneecap the eyeballs on his spider legs, but he's much more relentless, faster, and very vicious. Yeah, the original did have a little more personality. This one goes for straightforward horror. It is a dead serious game. They kept in some of Leon's goofy one-liners, but they're easily missable. I will say the boss fights are much better in this one. Krauser's boss fight was the highlight of the original. Here, Krauser is also a tough boss, but has a lot more dramatic storytelling, dialogue, and interactions with Leon. So, while they took away the over-the-top campiness, they kind of make up for that by trying to make the story a lot deeper. Krauser is actually Leon's drill sergeant. He's the one who taught Leon Kennedy all his moves. Krauser was once a hero. He was a noble government agent, but then he turned to the dark side and joined Sadler's forces. Of his own free will, mind you. Krauser reveals he's not brainwashed or bribed. He wanted ultimate power, and he's teamed up with Sadler to do that, completely betraying his country because he felt betrayed by them. Louise also gets a lot more in this one than he did in the original. Louise was one of the best side characters ever, and I'm glad he stuck around a lot longer in the remake. Louise is Leon Kennedy's new odd friendship. Louise is an undercover cop. Here we find out he was a former villain who helped Umbrella Corps, and he's trying to atone for his past sins. And I do like that Louise lives a lot longer in this one. He dies in the halfway point in this one, compared to the original where he died in the first fourth, and you kind of forget about him. Who do you think would win a fight to the death, Krauser or Wesker? Oh, Wesker, easily. The old game, yeah, I read that one. Okay, so the gameplay is a lot fun here. It carries on the spirit of RE4, but RE4 was like already an over-the-shoulder third-person shooter game. Here, it feels like they gave them like much better graphics and a much more serious atmosphere and a lot more darkness. There's a lot of dark areas on this game compared to the brightly lit original, but I was okay with that because the scares were still there. These are technically new zombies. They're the Lost Plagas. Sadler has found a way to control zombies by infecting himself with a parasite that allows him to control them because his mind is stronger, and that's how he's built his cult. Sadler has a Plagas parasite within him, but he controls it rather than the zombies controlling him. He has a lot of resistance and power over this parasite, and is mind controlling the zombies on his island, creating new zombies, new weapons to plan to take over the world. He has Krauser, Ramon Salazar. I do like Salazar in this. He's trying to be scary, but just isn't. I do kind of miss the over-the-top Salazar. Yeah, Leon throwing the knife at his hand and he screams like a girl is always funny. But here he actually like point blank shoots Salazar as he's monologuing, which is also pretty funny. Yeah, I think Wesker easily beats Krauser in any timeline. Ada Wong also has a DLC in this, Separate Ways, where we see what Ada was doing when she was off screen. I don't like Ada Wong's voice acting. I think she lacks a lot of charm and wits that the original had, and they tried to make her dead serious, but it did not fit for a game like this. Ada's voice acting is easily the worst in the game. Leon gets a lot more funny moments. Leon is a bona fide badass by this point, so we get to see a much more cooler, competent Leon compared to the original RE2. Unfortunately, Ashley still sucks. They made her less annoying and they tried to make her more useful, but it wasn't by much. Ashley is still a damsel in distress, still needs a lot of saving, and honestly, she was much easier to protect compared to that stupid, annoying escort mission, but not by much. Ashley's only slightly improved. She's not completely redeemed in my eyes. Ashley is the president's daughter, and she clearly has a crush on Leon. It's a lot more downplayed compared to the original, but the original had fun with it. Here, they don't want to make her, I guess they don't want to make it awkward because there's an age difference between them, but that's kind of the point. It was like a child crushing on an adult. That's bound to happen, but yeah, whatever. Ashley is still kind of annoying. You have to save her all the time. She does get moments where you can play as her, dodging them, but it's kind of reminiscent of the Sherry Birkin levels of RE2. Sorry, reading some comments. The boss fights are actually pretty good in this. El Gigante is a lot creepier. He looks like the troll from Lord of the Rings. And yeah, he's very vicious, very threatening. I did find him a lot funner in the original, but here, they make him much more harder and relenting. He's a total giant troll that nearly crushes you. The fight with the wolf is a lot better. Yeah, the wolf doesn't glitch out like he does in the original. The wolf fights him. You destroy the parasite on El Gigante's back, and what can be worse than El Gigante? Oh, I know. 2 El Gigantes! No! Yeah, you fight 2 El Gigantes, but this time Louise gets to help you, and you kill them with that giant incinerator. One of the bosses I found scary was the weird blind monster with the Wolverine claws. There's like a blind zombie brute, and he chases you like as a stalker enemy all throughout this hidden section of the island. That guy was really creepy. Love Ashley's designs in both games, maybe more in the remake, but she's more tolerable in the remake. Yeah, she's not repeating her same one line, Leon, help, Leon. Yeah, that's all she kind of said in the original. Thank goodness they programmed more lines into her. I do find Krauser's boss fight fun in both of them. I like the quick time knife fight in the original a lot more, but here they do have a knife fight with him still, but it's a lot briefer. Then he turns into like a giant monster and is another kind of fighting stalker enemy type. Krauser gets a lot more backstory here, which is why I do kind of appreciate that. Krauser is underrated. Yeah, Krauser, unfortunately, also doesn't have his connection to Ada Wong or Umbrella Corps like he did in the original, making him kind of question how he got here. Unfortunately, Sadler is not as interesting. Sadler had so much personality in the original, but he had a lame boss fight. Here, the opposite has hit me. Sadler has no dimension as a character, but has one of the best boss fights ever. Sadler is a lot more vicious and threatening, and a lot more hardcore as a boss fight than he was in the original. I always had the problem that Krauser was too easy. After fighting like all these enemies and building him up, hyping him up as the ultimate villain, it's kind of too easy. You just have to shoot and stab like all the eyeballs on him. Here, Krauser is much bigger, moves faster, and has a multi-phase boss fight. You fight him once on the platforms, he doubles up his attacks in the second round, then he turns into like a Lovecraftian monster where you rocket launch against him. Yeah, that was a lot funner. Sorry, I needed some water. But yeah, I found Sadler fun as a boss fight, but not as interesting character-wise, which is, the original had the opposite issue. He was one of the funnest characters, but not a very good boss fight. And that is kind of a problem when it's a video game and not a visual story you're just watching. Ada Wong, also much better in the original. That's kind of why I don't like RE4 as much. RE4 has a lot of good in it. It is a good game. I do like that they added the bonus effect where you see Sadler's zombies are all dying without him. They were completely connected and mind controlled by him. And now the zombies are completely pathetic. They only slow you down as you're running to the jet ski to escape the island bombing. Oh, yeah, and Louise also has a very good redemption arc. Louise actually has a much more tragic death here. The original Louise, yeah, he had a sad death, but he died so early in the game, and I wanted to know more about him. Here, we actually do get to see more about Louise, and he gives Leon inspiration that people can change. Krauser has also a tragic death here. He realizes how far he's fallen. He teases Leon, calling him Rookie all throughout the game until he finally dresses him as Leon on his deathbed. I became an expert saving Ashley in the OG, but in the remake, the AI keeps getting in the way of me and the enemy. Or she stays in the ground in front of the enemy. The AI doesn't obey me. Yeah. The fight with Krauser, which you prefer, the original or remake? I do kind of prefer the original because of the fun QuickTime event fights. Yeah, Krauser was a lot funner in the original. Here, I think he's fine. He reminded me way too much of the RE8 boss fights where they just slowly turn more and more into a monster you have to shoot. Sadler's boss fight is upgraded, and I will say, Salazar's boss fight is upgraded. Salazar is now like a flying winged dragon, compared to the original where he like glued himself to the wall and turned into like an earth mover type of monster. Yeah, it looked cool, but it was also kind of too easy because you know where he is at all times, compared to Salazar as this monologuing dragon flying around taunting you. That was a little more fun. Yeah, I don't like Ashley still. You saw my RE characters tier list. Ashley still sucks. She sucked in the original, and she still sucks here, but just less sucky. Ada Wong also kind of downgraded. I like her look. She does look hot. She looks cool. She's badass. Her Separate Ways DLC is fun, but the voice acting sucks, and I do kind of prefer the flirty Catwoman she was in the original. She and Leon had more chemistry. Here, the relationship is also played much more serious. It's like dead serious, dramatic, and asking legit if, Ada, can you actually change? And Ada Wong is remade into like a morally gray anti-hero. I liked it in the original better, where Ada was always confident and knew exactly what side she was on, but she kept it to herself. But yeah, RE4, definitely a fun game. Very visually impressive. The graphics look nice. This is a very pretty game. Easily the best graphics out of all of these, but the gameplay a bit challenging. It mixes a bit of the original RE4, but with a lot of RE7 and 8 mixed in, fighting like those giant monsters that get worse, stalker enemy types, leaping over areas. There's a lot of fun throwbacks to everything, and yes, don't worry, the merchant is here, and he's still as cool as ever. What are you buying? Hello, stranger. The guy's voice acting in the original was more iconic, but here, I think he's alright. He looks a lot more like a Mortal Kombat ninja now, but whatever, he's still pretty funny. Why'd they remove the original knife fight of Leon and Krauser? That's one of the best parts in every playthrough. I agree. I thought that was a lot funner and a lot more action-packed. It looked very visually interesting. Here, it's more so like a common brawl that you would have. He, like, still tries to knife you, but you have to, like, block him. That's a bit lame. They also finally got to have the twin Chainsaw sisters. In the original game, the Chainsaw Man had like two sisters, and they were in optional boss fights. Not in the remake. In the remake, you have to fight them, and yeah, it is pretty stressful and intimidating. El Gigante still looks pretty cool, pretty threatening in this one, compared to the original where he looked more like a fantasy creature. But I do have to reference the one weird moment at the end of the game. Of course, Leon saves the president's daughter, defeats Sadler, kills the cult, and they bomb the island just like in the original. Everything's all hunky-dory, happily ever after. Until we get our twist ending. We get a post-credit scene where Ada Wong gets away with a sample of the Las Plagas virus, and she's delivering it to her employer, Wesker. Yep, Albert Wesker shows up for a cameo, and I'm not a big fan of the voice acting. I think Wesker sounds a lot more generic in the remake. No disrespect towards the voice actor, but I'll have to hear how he is in future titles. Here, I wasn't too impressed. He's trying to sound like DC Douglas, but Douglas has a lot of the charm and charisma. But exactly like in RE4, she was working with Wesker, but Ada decides not to give the virus to Albert, and instead turns away in a different direction. Ada hijacks the helicopter and decides not to fulfill her end of the bargain, kind of making things confusing because Wesker takes the Las Plagas sample and uses it to upgrade the Ouroboros virus, the zombie outbreak of RE5, and they're implying RE5 might not happen now. And that's where it's very confusing to me. Is RE5 gonna be remade or actually happen? Are we gonna completely reinvent the story? Because Ada Wong does not deliver the sample. Ada Wong instead goes off on her own and decides to, I guess, destroy the sample, meaning Wesker is not gonna create Ouroboros and we're not gonna have the plot of RE5. Ada has not sex appeal, that's Catwoman feel. Yeah, Ada Wong is RE Catwoman, okay? Yeah, they removed the best part. Okay, so this kind of confused me. The post-credit scene implies Ada Wong has turned good, and she's not gonna give the sample to Wesker, creating an alternate timeline. So, RE5 might not happen. Which, yeah, kind of perplexes me. They, of course, keep it vague and keep it open-ended, hinting that the Wesker plot, RE5, might happen, but it also might not. It might be greatly different. They might abandon everything they did in the original RE5, and I believe it's because they're afraid of the racism accusations. RE5 has a lot of BS accusations that it promotes racism because you're shooting black zombies. You know, in Africa, because that's where the game takes place. Like, what did they expect? A bunch of white and Asian people to pop out of the graves in Africa? But yeah, basically, Tricell colonized Africa and experimented on this tribe, using them as test subjects, and it was to show you how monstrous the villains are, and you're not really getting joy out of killing these guys, you're fighting them in self-defense, but yeah, basically got accusations that it promoted racist violence, and it's BS. Like, it is total BS. It's a bunch of whiny crybabies who are terminally online. Ada Wong, the red dress, and that Catwoman aura. Yeah, I love that. Though, her voice acting also pretty much sucked. Yeah, Ada sounds like way too serious and always pissed off, and the voice acting is very flat. I think Jennifer Yen as Vipra was better than this voice actress. That's how bad it was. But yeah, RE5 might not happen because Ada doesn't deliver the Las Plagas to Wesker. She takes it for herself, hinting that the Ouroboros outbreak might not happen, or we're gonna get a greatly redesigned RE5, and I'm kind of worried. So, there's a lot of questions over which game is going to be remade next. You would think it'd be RE5. RE5 would be the direct remake, but some fans have also talked about how they should remake one of the other games, namely RE0 and Code Veronica. I would love a Code Veronica remake, but I do not trust the current Capcom team to do it justice, and RE0, I think, would probably succeed because Rebecca Chambers has not been deep dived into very often. But some people would say that they also have to hype up the Wesker and Chris rivalry, and Wesker comes back in both RE0 and Code Veronica. We find out Albert Wesker is alive. He survived the events of the first game. He was a surprise cameo in the fourth game, because it's something you don't see coming. Wesker was presumed dead, and it's the first time we ever see him after a few titles. But RE4 implies that they might be going in a different direction, and I'm not sure how to feel about that. I would like to see RE5 again, but honestly, the original RE5 still holds up. I'm playing it like right now. Wolf and I are having a blast replaying it. The graphics actually hold up, and I would argue it's like one of their better modern RE games, but I won't complain if RE5 does get remade. I'm just kind of confused if it's gonna be remade. But yeah, to wrap up, RE4 is a pretty good title, but it does not beat the original. The original is much more faithful. RE4 has a lot of highlights, is a fun title, and actually improves on everything great of the second game, so I will give it a golden star. Okay, and that pretty much completes our list. I'll go over it one last time for any of you late birds, or for those of you who skip click all the way to the end. I personally hope Code Veronica gets remade, but I'm thinking RE0 or RE5 are the most likely candidates. I'm not sure if I want to get an RE5 remake because I love the original RE5 so much, but we'll see if it's good or bad. But we do see Capcom is working on RE9 instead. RE9 is going to be this upcoming Resident Evil title. RE9 looks okay, but I'm still kind of worried because they said they want to get away from some of the original characters, which kind of scares me because RE9 is going to be the last numbered title in the original RE universe. But we'll see how that turns out. But yeah, we'll go over it one last time for any of you late birds showing up, or for those of you who want to see the ranking in full. You can actually see it all in full, only one bad game, and 3 masterpiece remakes, because that's how good this franchise is. Yeah, the Resident Evil games are much better than the movies, but we'll go over them for you. On rock bottom in You're Pitiful is the Nemesis remake. Was there really any doubt? This one was disappointing, underwhelming, took away a lot of golden moments from the original, and made Jill Valentine a bitch, and made Nemesis an even bigger bitch, but in a different term. Well, this was fun, Kat. Looking forward to seeing the next tier list. Hopefully I can make it. See ya next time. See ya, Chris. It's kind of didn't. It was a Japanese port of Code Veronica on the PS3. Oh yeah, Code Veronica X. That's what it was called. It was more so a remaster than a remake, though. Yeah, RE3, it sucks. Don't recommend it. They made Jill Valentine unlikable, and it's not nearly as challenging as the other 3 up here. It's not unplayable, I will say. If you just want some bonus content, go ahead, but I wouldn't call it one of the top 10 Resident Evil titles. It is pitiful. Surprisingly, none in any of the middle tier lists, because we have a lot of good remakes here. Who are our all-stars? RE2. Yeah, I like it. It's a fun game. It is creepy. It did everything a remake should do, reminding people why the original is a masterpiece and adding a lot of great additions. There are some glaring weaknesses, like Chief Irons is not as good a character, and I do think they took away some of the fun bonus sections of the original, but RE2 is a good game. It's worth playing. It is scary, and it made Mr. X an icon. Next, RE4 Remake. Yeah, pretty cool. I will say I do respect that they took the silliness of the original fourth game and tried to make it a serious Lovecraftian horror movie. That was definitely a unique take. It has a fun horror atmosphere, a lot of great boss fights, and some great new material for Leon Kennedy's story. It is a good game, and I highly recommend it more than two. But the first place star has to go to the remake of RE1. Yeah, it still holds up. It's still a fun game. It's basically the original with better graphics, better voice acting, and a lot more horror scenes, a lot more horror atmosphere, a lot more horror monsters, and a lot more creepiness in the air. Resident Evil 1's remake still holds up as the best remake of the series because it plays exactly like its original game and gives us a much greater new lens to look at the story. I highly recommend this one because it is the best RE remake. Okay, so yeah, that pretty much completes this tier list. Sorry it was a short one, but hey, we only got 4 games to work with. We'll see if I do all the actual number titles soon, but I gotta wait for RE9. What's gonna be our next tier list? That's kind of up in the air. I'm thinking about either doing a ranking on Slade, aka Deathstroke, ranking all of his adaptations, or doing a ranking on all the scary movie, horror movie parodies in celebration of the upcoming 6th one. I just have to watch them all, so that's still a bit ways away. Next video, I do have a Twilight Zone video on Patreon. Wolf released a new short. I have a review of Batman Assault on Arkham on Patreon. Go check that out. What's in the future? I'm leaning towards Tales from the Dark Side, but we'll see if I actually get around to doing it, since I do have some plans coming up. But yeah, those are the only hints you're getting. Thank you for joining us on this tier list. I'm glad you really liked it. Last question. What did you think? Fans want a remake of the remake of RE1 Remake? Honestly, I think it's kind of unnecessary at this point because we got so many remasters or re-releases of the first one. I wouldn't object to it, but I think it's kind of been done to death and we need a break from the first one. Okay, so yeah. The Resident Evil franchise is good, and even most of its remakes are good. Don't play the third one, it sucks. 1, 4, and 2, these are the top all-stars. Definitely recommend playing these ones. They are good games. Might not be as good as some of their original counterparts, namely RE4, but they're still playable because the Resident Evil franchise is that great. So thank you all for joining us, and I guess I'll be setting you guys free. Remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe, or just tune in for more content posted here on Wolf Entertainment. I'm your host, Catastrophe, and I'll see you all next time.